Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk about the best trays or sheets you can use for dehydrating. Now this can be whether you're dehydrating in your oven, using a dedicated dehydrator, or even dehydrating on your wood stove or other such means. So I wanted to cover this so I could have this all in one video. And let's start off with, for the sake of those who do not have a dedicated dehydrator and would like to use their oven. So as I've mentioned in several videos, the first time I ever dehydrated anything was quite a number of years ago. It might have been at least 30 years ago, when Patrick had got a deer and we were processing all this meat, and I decided, gosh, I still have a lot of meat to go through. Why not try making some venison jerky? I'd never done that before, and I didn't have a dehydrator, so I simply marinated the meat and then stuck it on some cookie sheets in the oven and dehydrated it at the lowest temperature. I don't remember how long it took, but it was maybe 12 hours-ish. I don't know, maybe longer. It was a long time ago, I don't remember. So you can use any cookie sheet, though I do recommend getting away from aluminum as much as possible, which is what I think I was using back then, not knowing any better. There are other types of cookie sheets that if you already have them, I highly suggest using them, or if you can afford it, I also highly recommend getting yourself a good stoneware cookie sheet. I think these are the best for baking cookies and more, but also for dehydrating because they are a little bit more porous. So any kind of stoneware is going to work great for dehydrating. In fact, I actually do use this for drying. So some of you might know, if you've been following any of my dehydrating videos, that I actually have a couple of racks that Patrick made for me from old bed rails, and I'll link to that video down below of several years back where he shows how he put it together, how he made them. And then we were able to find these. They're actually for a smoker at our local grocery store. So, you know, if you have a store that sells smokers and those kind of things, you might be able to find trays just like this. I couldn't find them years ago. Several years ago, I was trying to look for them online so I could show people where to buy them. I never could find them. So just look, especially if you have like a sporting goods store, Cabela's, anything like that, that would have that kind of stuff. You might be able to find these. They usually sell them individually. They're stainless steel. They're a nice fine mesh, and they're usually about $10 a piece, and they're 14 by 14, I think, is how big they are. So anyway, he made that for me. And then what I sometimes do, if I've got stuff on the trays and I've got it sitting on top of the wood stove, or I've got something that I don't want too close to the wood stove, I'll take this and set it right on the very top. So I think I have at least one picture here, maybe more. I think I have a couple pictures, because I have one where I'm drying some grains back when I used to soak my whole grains, which I don't do anymore, but I then would dry them on top of the wood stove using this and getting them as far away from the heat as possible, but also making it easier for me to stir them every so often, But I also dehydrated turkey doing the same thing by setting it in this on top of the wood stove. And the nice thing about that is, if it is the only thing I'm drying, then I can still have that open space underneath when, you know, we got coffee and other things sitting on the wood stove. We can reach through there and get it easy enough, because it is kind of a cramped area to work in when you got that up there. But anyway, yes, you can use that on or near your wood stove, in your oven. It really works great for drying most kinds of foods. Maybe not so well with your more liquidy items like broth and milk and eggs, but at least for everything else. I haven't tried it with anything liquidy like that. I should at some point. You can sample, you know, you could always try it by putting just a little on there and then seeing how well that works in your oven or elsewhere. Then the other thing I like to do is, I started doing this quite a number of years ago with my Nesco, because everything on there was plastic, and I got to really where I hated the idea of dehydrating foods where you've got heat, even though it's a low heat applied to it, and then sitting on plastic, and heat's going to cause some of those chemicals in the plastic to be released. So I figured, at least to make it a little bit safer, I decided to start making cloth covers that would at least prevent so much plastic exposure to the foods. It would also help prevent things from falling through, especially when you're doing little tiny herbs like thyme is one of the worst ones. They just, it dries and it's little tiny stuff and it starts falling through. Then I can just spread it on my cloth. And all I use, this isn't going to look very pretty because it's been used so many times. It's a little stained. I've used it for apples and potatoes and black olives and so much more. But anyway, I just, when it comes to anything square or rectangular, such as the trays for my wood stove or my Kasori trays, or if you have an Excalibur, I just put the snips in the cotton fabric. Using some old recycled sheets is best because they're nice thin. If you can find them in 100% cotton, that can be the tricky part. And then I just rip them. I snip them at the size I want and then just rip them to fit my trays. I usually try to allow at least a little bit of overlap. You could choose to hem them if you want, or even at least use pinking shears and then cut them to the size you want. I did something similar with my Nesco trays because that's what I started with, obviously. And then I just cut them. I used one of those fruit roll-up trays as a template and then just drew it onto my fabric and then cut it to fit in my Nesco trays. And that I always use those all the time when I'm doing anything in the Nesco, unless it's a liquid. So it doesn't matter if it's in my Nesco, on my Kasori, or on my wood stove. Well, on top of the wood stove, I don't usually use the fabric because I do worry about it getting too hot. But if it's next to the wood stove, I will, as you can see in this picture right here. Then if you're doing the liquid items, now they have all kinds of different silicone trays that you can get. The Bright Kitchen brand, last I looked, was the only brand that actually makes them for the Nesco. But all these other brands that are coming out now, the Bright Kitchen was the first one I found when it came to a silicone sheet that had edges on it. And ever since then, they've been coming out with more and more all the time. And so these were the first ones I bought. They were more expensive. They've actually gone down in price since I bought them, probably because now they have competition. And so I decided to go ahead and try these brown ones because they were considerably less expensive than what I first paid for these. Now these are for the Kasori. They do also make them to fit the Excalibur, and the size that fits the Excalibur would also work great in the larger Kasori and very likely in any other type of cabinet dehydrator that is roughly that size, because the Excalibur ones I think are 13.5 or 14 inches, something like that. So whatever size the Excalibur is, that would fit, those sheets would fit in any of your larger dehydrators, such as the larger Kasori, which is a newer model than the ones I have, which are smaller, which I actually prefer for the space saving. I have two and I stack them, as you can see in this image. But anyway, I see no difference in how good either one of these work, but I'll link to these just because they're less expensive. And again, they make these in the size for the smaller Kasori as well as the Excalibur. And then in the Bright Kitchen, you can find them for your Nesco, your round dehydrators. And you just want to check, I can't tell you, the measurements and stuff. You would have to go check what the measurement of your trays are and then the measurements of the different ones that they have. So I'll link to the Bright Kitchen for the Nesco simply because they're the only ones that make that, last I looked. And I'll link to these brown ones for the Kasori and Excalibur. But there could be other brands out there now that are even less expensive. I've seen them in gray and yellow and maybe even red, and they're all going to have different prices, and it's going to depend on the package you buy. Sometimes you can buy a package of 3, sometimes a package of 6. It just depends on what it is. But anyway, these get well used. So I'm glad that initially when I bought the brown ones, it was just so I could try them out. It was before I bought a second Kasori. Now I'm super glad that I have them because sometimes I'm using all 12 of these silicone trays depending on what it is I'm dehydrating. If I have a lot of liquid items, things like eggs, tomatoes especially, and I puree the tomatoes and dehydrate them, and the bone broth that I make from chicken or turkey bones. And it's also great for using things like when I'm dehydrating cheese and I don't want to get all that fat soaking into my fabrics. and several other things. Anything that's going to be drippy. I tend to do a lot of my meats on here. So anyway, I just wanted to share that so I can have this all in one place, because I get asked this quite a bit about like what do I use for liquid, and even though I cover it in a lot of videos, those are usually videos where I'm talking specifically about dehydrating certain things. I thought it'd be nice to have a video where it was just on the trays that you can use, or the sheets that you can use in your dehydrator, or even in your oven or near your wood stove, or however it is you're dehydrating. Now, what I'm going to also do is link down below in the description box, so don't forget to click on more or show more in the words you'll see right down here just below the video screen, to open that up to find all these links, because I'm going to be putting my full dehydrating playlist, which I believe also includes the video on various ways that you can dehydrate, where I cover a whole bunch of different things that you can use to save yourself money, especially if you can't afford to buy a dehydrator. There's so many ways that you can go about it. It's all going to depend on the area you have, your climate, how much humidity you have, what time of the year it is, and so on. And then I also have a video on a comparison of electric dehydrators. Then also the newest one is my new setup with my Casoris. If you'd like to see that, that should be in there too, where I've got them stacked, and that, I love that. I'm really, really loving that. So anyway, don't forget to check those out. Maybe you'll find something in there, you know, how to dehydrate eggs or cheese or broth or meat or all the other things I'll have in there. It's a pretty long playlist. So if you have the link, you can just then go scroll through and see all the various dehydrating videos I have in there. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions, what you do, and the type of equipment, do you use an air fryer or anything else for dehydrating, then please share in your comments down below so people can learn from you as well. And thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.